Hey guys, can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. This is the final one, the final Q&A. It's sad, but it's exciting because you've learned a lot. And today we get to do some live commentary, whether you like it or not. But seriously, if you don't like it, you can say no thanks, and I'll skip over your videos. But say hello, let me know you're out there. And I might actually switch my microphone. So while you are saying hey, I'm going to attempt some audio configuration. But if you're out there, say hi. Let's see. I'm going to unplug this. Anybody out there? Let's try a little screw here. Oh, maybe I can't do it. I may not be able to switch my audio settings. Hey, oh, it's late in Tokyo. Well, more power to you. Thanks for joining. Anybody else out there? I see some people in the shadows. Hey, Pete. Pete's in the house. Very good, very good. Well, we'll wait a couple more minutes for some folks to sign on, and then we'll get started with my live comments. And hopefully we won't make anyone cry today. Just kidding. Let's see here. Pulling up your recordings. A handful of people posted in the Facebook group, which is great. So we'll just wait one more minute and then get going. And of course, as always, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay. Here we go. We're going to start with, we're actually going to start with Jervison, who posted something from week 2, part 2. So I'm going to just, even though it's not his last recording because it's not from the final assignment, I'm going to listen to it anyway live just because that's what we're doing today, and I'll give some live commentary. So I'll start it over, and I'll turn it up nice and loud so we can all hear. cool. A lot of nice things happening in there. Good use of the crane exercise, moving that idea from one chord to the next. Some rhythmic variation in there as well, which I liked for the most part, but there were some times when the variation just got too varied, in essence. There was just too much variation, and at least in my opinion, I felt that the rhythmic variations that were in there were just too drastic and didn't need to be. Like, there were some times where sometimes when Jefferson just changed one note and just changed the rhythm of that one note, and I think that's enough. You don't need to change much to get sufficient variation, and that's very important, whether you're varying rhythm or the shape of your line or the pitches, whatever the case may be, whatever element you want to vary, you don't need to change it by much in order to get the effect of the variation, in order to get the effect of keeping the idea fresh and not stale. If you go overboard, then you lose that coherence. So when you're developing your ideas, again, whether it's rhythmically based or pitch based or whatever, use that repetition, whether it's crane or massage, repeat something. And when you vary, do it subtly. Be very subtle with your variations. So that's my one comment. The other comment is actually in terms of the time feel. I think Jefferson would benefit from playing as if he were trudging through quicksand and sludge and mud. It's a little rushy right now. It's like dee doo doo dee 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 doo doo da. That's the phrase, right? But sometimes it sounds like dee doo dee 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 dee. It's like we're getting there too fast. So you can actually play like you're feeling like you're way too slow, like you're dragging almost. Dee boo boo ba be ba dee boo ba. And you can really exaggerate it at first. If you listen to a guy like Dexter Gordon, laid back tremendously with his phrasing, tenor saxophonist Dexter Gordon. Sometimes it's like he's playing in a whole different tempo, but he lays back a lot. And I'm not saying, Jefferson, you need to do this as much as somebody like Dexter Gordon is doing or did, but practicing like that a little bit, or at least exaggerating the laying backness of your phrasing, will greatly enhance the performance. And the benefit of having such a controlled set of pitches, especially when you're using something like construction crane, where it's very much mapped out what you're supposed to play on each chord. Excuse me. Because you do have those limited pitches, it gives you some attention to focus on things like phrasing and making sure you're not rushing. So that's my 2 cents on Jefferson's recording. Now we have another one here from Pete. And Pete is in the house. So this is perfect. This is Pete's latest recording. All right. Cool. A lot of great things happening in here, Pete. I know you've been messing around with the blues scale quite a bit, and it's sounding cool. Some really bluesy lines in there. I would recommend challenging yourself to stick with one idea for longer. And you do some nice, there are some nice moments here where you play off of your ideas and you have these sort of call and response like phrases. But I would like to hear what you could come up with when you force yourself to stick with an idea and develop it gradually and let it evolve, even over the course of an entire chorus or two choruses, if you can. And the way to do that is by gradually adding variation and just managing that balance of repetition and variation is really the key there. But some very cool lines in here. And again, I think the bluesiness is there. So if that's what you're going for, I think you're doing a good job of it. But again, using construction crane more so, using massage method more so to help you develop and evolve your initial ideas will be helpful there. And maybe that wasn't your intention on this one. You might have been working just with connectors and blues scale. If that's the case, that's fine. But just something to think about as you continue to work on your improvisation. Also, like I was saying with Jervison's recording, I think some a laying back approach would be helpful with your phrasing. Overall, there's this slight sense of urgency in your playing that could be lessened and help everything just sound a little bit slicker. Let's listen a little bit more. Like, it's a very cool line, but if you can lay back on that, 2, 3, 4, especially like right in the middle there. I don't know if you could hear me do that, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can kind of catch up at the end. Those little things will really enhance the sound of your performance and of your improvisation. Let's see if we can pick out one more specific example. Even right there, actually. Yeah, that's pretty rushed. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Just feel like you're really laying back. You're playing in quicksand and a whole bunch of mud, and get to that last note slower, essentially. And there's not an exact science to this. I find just trying to play slower than you think you need to play is a great place to start, and getting comfortable with exaggerating that slowness and just seeing how it feels, seeing how it sounds. You can always speed back up to catch up when needed. Nice connectors there. What I really like about this phrase here, this 4-bar section, I'll back it up a little bit more. So that's very cool. You basically repeated the same phrase. You played it once, you played it exactly the same after, and then the last time was fairly similar but somewhat different. And I love that saying that I yell out a bunch. Similar but different. Very nice use of creating a pattern and then breaking that pattern. And even going on to the 4 chord. So that 4 chord, while it's not necessarily the same phrase, there's still an essence of the initial phrase. So there's variation in there, but I still feel the connection to that initial phrase. And then things start to get a little bit disguised in the turnaround. And that's it's not, at a certain point, it's like, what's your preference? Like, how much variation, how much repetition do you want to include in your playing? So in the turnaround, things definitely start to depart slightly. I mean, it would be interesting to hear what you could do if you reeled it in a little bit there and you stuck closer to the initial phrase and just to see what happens. I mean, these are sort of compositional challenges to put on yourself. And if you can work out some ideas that are still creative and interesting, yet tied to what you played before, I think that's the ideal. That's what I'm always reaching for in my playing, in my writing. But a very nice recording overall. Just a few tips for you to consider. So let's go on. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to jump in. All right. Here we go. Is this Che Ching? I'm not sure, but let's listen. Cool. Okay, we're going to go through it again, and I'm going to stop and start quite a bit. I just wanted to listen to it all the way through, so you could all hear it. But my first comment, even without going through individual sections, is to leave more space. There's a lot of notes in this 3-chorus solo. Not a lot of space, and even just a little bit of resting between phrases will help open this solo up tremendously and bring it to a whole nother level of sophistication. But let's get into the weeds here a little bit, and I'm going to stop and start and comment on what I think is working well and what I think could be improved. Okay, so right off the bat, some really nice use of connectors and melodic development. So you sort of have this phrase that goes up, and then you have a nice response coming down. Good use of rhythmic repetition. Da 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 da. So you have that rhythmic element tying those two phrases together, but you have a nice balance of the first phrase going up and the second phrase going down, and then of course those connectors are super slick. 4-chord, continuing to develop that same idea. So, for instance, right there, let me back it up a little bit more. Here's the 4-chord. So, like for instance, that last note, da, would be great if you just held that note or you played that note and then you stopped playing. The handful of notes that come after it before the turnaround hits, I don't think are necessary. I think it would be more beneficial to that line if there was just some space after it, just to let it breathe a little bit. Let's listen one more time. 4-chord. Yeah, that ba-do-do-da-da. Like, I understand you're leading into the upcoming line, but having a little gap would be very beneficial and would help quite a bit. Because it's a nice line, and when you have a nice line, you can let it just kind of be there and have some rest after it. It really makes a big difference. There's something else I wanted to say here. That's a nice use of development there. Do da de da do da da. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. So this phrase that keeps coming back, da do da, that approach that he's doing into the third, this thing. I don't have sound here. What's going on? Where is my keyboard? Why can't I hear anything? Did I unplug my keyboard? No. Stand by. I'll open and close. There we go. Okay, so this phrase that he's playing, this thing, it's a great approach. It's a really nice runway landing on that D. The only thing is that we've heard it so many times now that it's starting to get old. And that's where that balance comes into play about repetition and variation. You have to be aware of the elements that you're repeating and the elements that you're varying. And if you keep coming back to that same ba-do-da, and maybe you were just wanting to workshop that idea and get it under your fingers and get it into your ear, if that's the case, no problem. But if this was just something you kept coming back to because you wanted to develop the idea, I think at a certain point, you do need to change it. And you don't have to change it much, but just some sort of a change will be helpful. So if it's 1, 2, 3, maybe you do like even just a rhythmic change, like 1, 2, 3, or even delaying it. So like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So you actually start it after the downbeat. Those are all rhythmic variations. Pitch variations would be fine too. You could do a different approach landing on the D, maybe changing one note here or there. But some kind of variation would be beneficial with that pickup that comes up quite a bit. Yeah, so there's a lot of notes in here. You're leaving no space. And it's not that the notes are bad that you're playing. It's just in order to have effective phrasing, you need to have musical punctuation, which is what I call musical punctuation. Essentially, inserting commas, periods, exclamation points, question marks into the music. And all of those punctuation marks have one thing in common: pauses. They allow for some sort of a pause or a break in the phrase. And if we don't have any of those punctuation marks, we end up with run-on sentences. And musical run-on sentences are just as cluttered as language-based run-on sentences. That's cool. Nice long eighth note line there. What I'm saying about the musical punctuation doesn't mean you can't have long lines. It just means that between phrases, at least between some phrases, there should be some pause. Okay, very nice recording there. Let's keep going. This is Julia's recording. She wrote, here's my week 6 recording. Tried to integrate some of the course theory, but it's definitely not all in my brain/ear yet. Let's hear what she has. Cool. Another great recording. I'm going to go through it in detail in just a moment. A lot of what I've been hearing from people is on these 3 chorus solos, 3 very distinct choruses with distinct ideas. And while I understand we're working on a bunch of stuff, I just want people to consider at some point to see if they can have there be some sort of flow from chorus to chorus. So rather than thinking, it almost sounds like at times 3 separate solos. But if you can think of 3 choruses almost like a 3-act play, where you have a bigger picture in mind of how you're going to move from one chorus to the next and have them all be connected, that's a great place to aim. That's something really good to aim for. We've been talking about these sort of micro approaches to phrase development and developing your phrases from one to the next. But we can zoom out a little bit and think about, okay, how does the entire solo flow? Is there a connection from chorus 1 all the way through chorus 3? Just something to think about. All right, so a lot of great stuff in here. Let's give it another listen and make some comments. Great variation there. Virtually the same line, just with that extra note on the beginning of the second phrase. Bo, beda, do de do da. Bo, bo, beda, do ba do da. That's all it needed. A very successful use of repetition and variation. Julia changed one thing. She added one tiny note, and what a difference it made. Okay, so then she goes into somewhat of a massage, going to the 4 chord. And I think here we lose the essence of the original line. The shape of the line varies a bit much. I mean, it's not a bad line, but I think it could be a little bit more closely tied to what was played on the first 4 measures. Especially since she goes back to that initial line when the 1 chord returns in bar 6 or whatever that is. Okay, so on the turnaround, again, all the notes sound really good. Phrasing sounds good as well. There's some connection with what was played before, but there definitely is a departure in terms of the shape of the line. I think there's some rhythmic connection, but it would be interesting to hear her connect what was played on the turnaround to what was played before. But again, it's, I'm getting a little bit nitpicky at this point because this does sound really good. But let's keep listening. Okay, so one comment here. So that last phrase was a nice period in that it was a nice way of wrapping everything up. We brought it back to the original phrase. But again, now that we've heard that phrase so many times, I think that would be another opportunity to just change things up. Like, even end back up on the root just to kind of give it a real let's see. Even going down to the B flat. Maybe go to that flat 5. I know we didn't talk about flat 5s, but that would be something of an edgy end to the chorus. But some sort of a bow to tie on the end of that chorus would be nice, just to switch it up slightly. But very good chorus. The thing is, when we go to chorus number 2, we really shift gears and we go on to a bunch of new material. Good material, but definitely there's a sort of distinct break from chorus 1 to chorus 2. Very nice use of lower chromatic neighbors. So I like all of this. All that chromatic neighbor action is binding everything together, but something happens here. Da-da. I think that's what you want to play. Yeah, you're playing. I don't think you're playing the notes you want to be playing there. So you're going. You want to be doing that chromatic approach up to the 5th of the E flat 7 chord or your C7 chord on alto. So just be aware of that. Do-de-da-da. One thing about, that last phrase sounds cool. Something to keep in mind is when you're using those chromatic neighbors, ideally, you're going to be using those on offbeats, which is not to say you can't use them on downbeats, but do-de-da-da, you're playing that half step above the root right on the downbeat. It's like 2, 3, do-de-da-da. What might be more successful is something like I don't know. I guess it's okay. Maybe go with the chromatic, the lower chromatic neighbor. Yeah, I'm okay with it. That's cool. All right, let's keep going. Last chorus. So in this last chorus, I'm not hearing as much development of the ideas. But nice neighbor tones in there. Nice connectors. Dee-doo-da. So be careful. You're hitting that concert B flat on the F7, the concert F7 chord. That B flat is it's not the strongest note to be playing on that chord. Instead of, you might want to do like, or maybe outlining the 5th or the 3rd. But the 4th is not the best representation of a particular chord, especially a dominant 7. Yeah, but overall, really nice solo. I would just say in that last chorus, more development of the ideas like you did in the initial 2 choruses. Chorus 1 and chorus 2 were really strong, and maybe on chorus 3 you were just trying to loosen up a little bit, perhaps. But I think consciously, look, there's only so many things we can think about consciously when we're improvising. So you have to pick and choose your battles, essentially. But if you're going to think about one thing after this course, or when you're working on material for this course, it's essentially, how do I develop my ideas and how do I improvise like I'm composing? And I think that will help you the most. There are going to be times when we have to focus on other things, that's okay. But just from listening to this, so there's so much good material in here. In that last chorus, though everything still sounds cool, I think you do a really nice job in chorus 1 and 2 of developing the ideas. So more of that, more of that. Okay, let's see. I think we have one more here. This is a rhythm changes. Okay, from Hero. Ooh, okay, so he writes, my take on improvising over rhythm changes for week 6, taking advantage of all the strategies introduced through the coursework. I tried to keep it simple and nice. Really looking forward to live feedback on Wednesday. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we got some guitar in here. I'm going to start it again now that I know what to listen for. I like that last line at the end there. Funky stuff. Cool. Very cool. So let's listen again. It's kind of hard to hear the guitar because the bass and the guitar are on a similar frequency. So hopefully you guys can hear it out there. But I'm going to stop and go and give some detailed feedback. Okay, I love that part. So that's a really nice, a really nice development of that idea. I'll rewind. Yeah, so that's great. Not only is there a similar shape and pitch set, that rhythmic variation just brings it to life. Da do do da 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 da, something like that. It's very cool, and I like it a lot. More of that. The beginning stuff that we heard, some nice lines in there, some classic jazz vocabulary, which is working well for you. But what is really going to make your playing more special is more stuff like I was just commenting on, where you are creatively developing ideas. And that's what this whole course is about, is using things like construction crane and massage to develop your ideas. That's what's going to make your playing even more special. So learn the vocabulary, learn the licks, learn the lines that work as you make it through these changes. But once you get those under your belt and very much internalized, then you can think about, okay, how do I take this line that I know, this lick that I learned, and use it as ammo, as fodder for developing a longer line. Like that kind of stuff. Dee da dee do, ba ba da dee do do. Like the skeleton of that line is da da dee do, da da dee do. Beautiful. And you do a nice job of sort of continuing that ending phrase into the next 8 bars. So right there, I think that was a missed opportunity. I mean, yeah, you go into this cool bluesy thing. Oh, it's 6-string bass? Okay, my bad. That makes more sense that it sounds like the bass. Like boom, bum, bo do da, ball do da. Like you could have taken that idea up through the chord changes. What you ended up playing didn't sound bad. I just think that was a missed opportunity to develop that phrase that you started the second A section off with. All this bluesy stuff sounds really cool, especially in the context of what you've played already. But again, adding that stuff in is not bad. Just look for those opportunities where you can go beyond the vocabulary and say something with the vocabulary. It's kind of like, look, the reason I'm going to do a YouTube video on this pretty soon, that's basically going to be called, is it bad to learn licks, or is learning licks bad? Because a lot of people say, don't learn licks. It's bad. I don't think it's bad, but licks are kind of like cliches if you use them like cliches. But, well, I should say some licks are like cliches. Some licks have just been played so many times that it's basically a cliche. But there are some licks that are not cliches. I mean, you know, when I say, you know, where are my keys? That's not a cliche. It's just something that a lot of people say. Versus like, what's a cliche? Like, it's raining cats and dogs or something. I can't think of a good cliche. My point is that even sometimes with cliches, I'm workshopping this video live right now. What I'm going to say in the video is that even when you have a cliche, sometimes you can put a spin on that cliche by changing the context, and suddenly it has like, it breathes new life into that saying. I have to flesh this idea out a little bit more, obviously. But the reason I bring this up is because you go into some nice blues vocabulary, but you know, that blues vocabulary is cool. It's nice, but I think, again, to make the performance and the improvisation more elevated, more special, would be to see what you can do with that vocabulary, and instead of just going from lick to lick to lick, stick with one idea and see if you can elaborate on it. It's a nice line, though. Okay, so the bridge, again, all the notes sound cool, but this started to feel a little noodly. I think you got lost in Noodle Nation at this point. So let's go to the bridge again. So, dee dee do day da do da dee do do da dee do da do do da dee da dee da do do da 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 dee dee da dee da do. I'm just making something up, but what I'm trying to do is develop on that first line that you played. di, o, da. One example, let's make it a little bit more obvious. Okay. So that's using a lot of repetition, obviously. But if you can do that, then you can start to inject a little more variation when you feel like it's starting to get stale and you need to have that surprise in there. Whether it's something rhythmic or you add in a different interval or note or you change the shape slightly, whatever the case may be, there's an opportunity there to develop your idea through the bridge, because right now it does sound a little noodly. Okay, so what's going on there? It's not bad. It's just funny. I don't know. It makes me laugh. Okay, so before I get into that very end there that I keep laughing about, the last chorus, again, same comments as before. Nice material, good vocabulary. You're using the connectors well. The runways are there. Everything's happening. But to take this to the next level, it's a matter of expounding on the vocab that you know, so that you essentially you can play a predetermined lick even, and then improvise. Okay, how can I develop that line using the different techniques that we've discussed? But let's talk about this ending phrase here. Bom, 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 bom. So you're playing what kind of looks like an F minor line. So you're playing an F minor line over a C minor chord. And then you take it up. I like it there. I like it at the end there, because you resolve it nicely back into B flat. So it's kind of this outline. You're playing this. I wonder if what you were thinking there. This actually is a nice way to wrap this up. You're giving me an idea here. So what I was talking before about the cliches and putting those cliches in a new context to make them interesting, you can do that with things like tritone substitution. So let's take a really classic line. The one you played is pretty classic, and you do a nice job of implying a different chord, so you have some substitution, some harmonic substitution, and that breathes new life into the lick. But let's do another example. Let's say we do this line. That's a very common line. You hear this all the time, and especially in bebop. So if I have an F7 chord, it's A, C, E flat, G, D, C, or 3, 5, flat 7, 9, 6, 5. So what am I saying? I'm saying take this line, and then instead of playing it on an F7, play it on a B7. And then you're using that line to superimpose a B7 chord over the F7, which is tritone substitution. We didn't get into tritone substitution much at all in this course, but it's our last Q&A, so let's throw it in. So instead of, you've got this. Right? Using some of those alternate notes and implying the B7 chord gives you that out sound. But it's taking that cliche lick and breathing new life into it by changing the context. All right? So that's what I meant before about using cliches in a new and interesting way, which is kind of like what you did here, but I'm still not sold on the using it on the F minor. I'm not sure where that was coming from. You could have done, oh, sorry. You could have played it on C minor, then gone to B minor, and then down to B flat. That would have been an option. But overall, very cool solo. I think I made my point with my comments. Everybody posted some really great recordings, and it takes some guts because you knew I was going to do live commentary. But I appreciate everybody posting who did. And if you didn't get to post, if you didn't have time, this Facebook group will remain open. So make sure you post, and I'll still pop in here and provide comments. But I want to thank everybody for a really fun, productive 6 weeks. You still have access to the material after the 6 weeks conclude. Some folks have lifetime access if you enrolled in that portion of the course. Everyone else has 3 months. If you'd like to upgrade to lifetime access, I think I can offer that. I'll send an email out to everyone. But yeah, keep working on this stuff. This is, this journey does not end here. As I've said before, I'm still working on these very same exercises and concepts that I've been talking about the past 6 weeks. Just continue to calibrate the exercises to fit your level of skill, as I continue to say. But as I said before, the Facebook group will remain open. My inbox will remain open, so feel free to shoot me a note. And let me just double check that I didn't miss any questions that were sent to me before I sign off. Oh, here's a question from Che Ching. In the rhythm changes solo analysis first measure, you mentioned the 3-5-2-1 in B flat to the 3-5 flat 2-1 in order to fit the G7. However, the note A was already in the G mixed Lydian scale. Why would you take the flat 2 A flat instead of just going to 3-5-2-1? I do think it actually sounds better with A flat instead of A, but I don't know the thought process of knowing to use the B flat. Or should I just experiment with all possibilities? So the A flat on the G7 is the flat 9. And we didn't talk too much about altered extensions, but that's what's going on there. A flat is flat 9 on the G7, and that's a cool sounding note. You could do either. You could do the A natural or the A flat. The A natural is with the regular 9. The A flat is with the flat 9. The flat 9 is coming from the harmonic minor scale. So if you think about C harmonic minor, first of all, let's consider the chord progression. Let's consider the chord progression G7 to C minor, which is what happens in the rhythm changes. So we're going to C minor. So what we're going to try to use is the C harmonic minor scale on the G7. That was C harmonic minor starting on a G, and the scale includes that A flat. There's B, that's the third. A flat is the flat 9, and G is the root of the chord. So that's where you can get A flat from, is deriving is looking to the C harmonic minor scale, because we are going to C. I see you have a question there, carpism. I'll get to that in just a moment. Second question from Che Ching. In the same analysis, measure 15, you talked about superimposing the C7 flat 9 to F7. Can you elaborate a bit more on it? What is superimposing, how to spot or use it? Okay, so I talked a little bit about superimposing today, even before I saw the question here from Che Ching. Superimposing is, well, actually, I did a good video. Well, I think it's good. I did a good video recently on superimposition of harmony on a tune like So What, which doesn't have a lot of chords, obviously. It's just got the D minor and the E flat minor. So I talk about how to superimpose chords on top of that basic chord progression. But really what it comes down to is using particular notes to represent a chord that's not there. So we talked before about tritone substitution. We took a line that was in F7. That's A, C, E flat, G, D, C. It's outlining an F7 chord, right? There's F. So it's a lick that very much outlines the chord. So if you take that same line and you play it over a chord you want to substitute instead of the F7, so a common choice would be a B7, which is a tritone away. This is why it's called tritone substitution. If you play the same line, but pretend like you're playing it on a B7, you go from this to this. And what ends up happening is you get this interesting sound that doesn't quite fit the chord that's there, but it still works because of the fact that tritone substitution works pretty well in a lot of situations. So hopefully that explanation makes sense. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions. But just to get into the detail of what Che Ching was asking in regards to measure 15 of superimposing the C7 flat 9 to the F7, I just want to make sure I address that specifically. So let me pull it up real quick. I'm going to pull up the rhythm changes solo that we analyze. Give me a second here. So this is example. This is the rhythm changes example. Measure 15, okay. Ah, right, this part. So this is measure 15 of example 25. So the E and the D flat, right there, on beats 3 and the end of 3, those two notes outline or imply a C7 chord. E is the third of C7, D flat is the flat 9 of C7. So listen to it if I play this chord progression. That's C minor 7 to C7 flat 9 to F7. Again, the E is the third of the implied C7. The D flat is the flat 9. And then it goes down chromatically to E flat, which is the 7 of F7, to the 5 of F7, which is C, and then finally resolves. So that's what's happening there. If that sounds convoluted, my apologies. Okay, Carpism, last question. Is it okay to target non-chord tones in the runway method? It seems some part of the rhythm changes solo example in week 6 are targeting the 13th as in measures 10 through 11. Okay, let's check it out since it's up. So measures 10 and 11. Here's measure 10. So where is it targeting the 13th? On the F7? Technically on the F7, it's targeting the 5. It's just that we're hitting that 13 or that 6 on the downbeat. So it kind of looks like we're targeting it, but the truth is we're outlining the C more than the D. I think that's called an arpeggiatura. But the D is resolving down to the C. If I played it really slow, you can hear that tension and release. So the D isn't the target. The 13 is not the target. The C is. And then when we go to the next measure, yes, the E is emphasized. The 13 is emphasized because it's on the downbeat, but we're still targeting and outlining and closing the D, which is the 5. So I think the question is, well, your question is it okay to target tones, non-chord tones in the runway method? Yes, I think you can make that work. But I think the better question is, can we use the runway method and the connectors to target chord tones, but in instances where the chord tone is not landing on the downbeat, which is what's happening here. So most of the time, and this is where I encourage people to start off with connectors and runways, is to land on the downbeat with your chord tone. But there are going to be times where the chord tone is not on the downbeat. So you're saying can't distinguish which is the target and which is the approach note. Well, I would use your ear first and foremost, and you can slow it down and you can hear this. Which of those notes sounds most like the resolved note, and which note sounds like a tension? Connectors and runways are made up of tensions that resolve. So that's why I say there are no wrong notes. There are just notes that have more tension and notes that have less. If you're able to resolve the tension in an elegant way, then you're good to go. So the target note, again, is going to be the one that has the most amount of resolution to it. And then the runway, and I guess what makes it more confusing in this case is that in this runway, the target note, C, is, I'm on measure 10 here, by the way, second half of measure 10. The target note C is played twice. So we get to the target note before the runway is even up, is even over. But eventually we do end up on that C after that lower chromatic note. And the C is the note that feels the most resolved, at least to me. So I would trust your ears and then look at the theory of it. I mean, which note is more fundamental to the chord, the 5 or the 13? The 5. So you can use a combination of your ear and your knowledge of theory to help you determine which note is the target and which notes are the approach notes. Anyway, excellent questions. As I said, if you have other questions about anything, my door is open. You guys have been great students, and I want to encourage you to keep working hard, keep digging into this material, and continue to practice hard, because that's really what it all comes down to. Practice hard, practice smart, and keep asking questions. So I'll leave it there. Thank you again, and good luck.